Imagine a world that exists just a few millimeters away from your fingertips, yet remains forever out of reach. It is a world of light and shadow, of rippling surfaces and the quiet hum of hidden lives. This world does not breathe the same air you breathe. It does not feel the warmth of your sun on its skin. It is contained, bounded, framed, a moving portrait in a pane of glass. You lean in, your forehead almost touching the cool surface. On the other side, a fish turns its body, scales catching the light like shards of fallen stars. A slow drift of plants sways in an invisible current, as if listening to a song that you cannot hear. Tiny bubbles rise from nowhere, wobbling upward until they vanish at the surface, each one a silent messenger from deep below. We call this place an aquarium. But that word is far too small. It is not just a box of water. It is an entire self-contained cosmos. A sphere of existence suspended inside your world, but not part of it. A reality so close you could touch it. It's so untouchable you never will. Here time moves differently. The water slows everything down. A single flick of a tail can take seconds to unfold. Each muscle contraction, a slow-motion ballet. Light bends strangely, its path warped by the glass and the water it passes through. Colors are richer, deeper, almost impossibly saturated, as if they were painted by a hand that had never seen the dry land. And here, in this sealed-off reality, life adapts. The fish do not know that they are being watched, or perhaps they do, in some quiet way. Aware of the great, blurred shapes that loom on the other side of the glass. To them, you are a shadow, a passing cloud, a ripple in their constant sky. The world behind the glass is a mirror of our own, in miniature. It has its landscapes, its climates, its weather patterns, all compressed into a fragile frame. Its rains fall not from the clouds, but from the steady drip of a filter. Its winds blow not from the sky, but from the hum of a hidden pump. Its days and nights are dictated not by the turning of the earth, but by the flick of a human hand on a switch. Inside, entire dramas unfold unseen. Predators wait in the stillness, invisible until the last possible moment. Parents guard their young with a vigilance you might recognize in yourself. Creatures build homes, defend territories, steal food, and seek shelter from storms that never came from the sky. But there is more to this than biology. The world behind the glass is not just alive, it is alive because of us. Every droplet of water, every grain of sand, every shimmering scale is part of an experiment in survival. We have created a place that is both utterly artificial and completely natural at the same time. A contradiction, humming quietly in the corner of a room. 8. Perhaps you have stood before an aquarium and felt it. That subtle magnetic pull. You find yourself staring, your mind drifting, minutes slipping away unnoticed. It is not just the beauty of what you see. It is the awareness that you are looking into another reality. One that is self-contained. One that continues when you turn away. One that does not care whether you are watching or not. We live our own lives behind glass, in a way. Every window, every screen, every reflection is a boundary between here and somewhere else. We press our faces close, we gaze at things we cannot touch, and in doing so, we discover something about ourselves. The glass is a threshold, not a wall. It invites us to witness without interfering, to observe without possession. Behind the glass, the fish never see the bills you pay, the traffic you endure, or the sleepless nights you spend thinking of things you cannot change. They exist in their own clockwork rhythm, each moment wrapped in the timeless pulse of water. And when you watch them, you are allowed for a moment to step out of your own time and enter theirs. The water world is an ancient one. Long before glass, before tanks, before human curiosity, life began in water. In some sense, the aquarium is not a human invention at all. It is a memory, a way of recreating the cradle where all life began. The fish behind the glass are not prisoners of our curiosity. They are ambassadors from a time so distant it is almost mythical. A reminder that our ancestors once breathed through gills, felt the pull of currents, and lived in worlds with no horizon but the shimmering surface above. When you look at them, you are looking back in time, not just into their history, but into yours. The glass becomes a time machine, the water an ancient ocean, and the creatures within it, fragments of a past we can no longer visit, except here. And maybe that is why the world behind the glass feels so strangely comforting. It is not alien to us. It is familiar. Somewhere deep in our bones, in the salt of our blood, and the rhythm of our heartbeat, we remember what it was like to live in a liquid world. The longer you stand there, the more the boundaries blur. Your reflection overlays the drifting plants, the slow-turning fins, the small flickers of movement in the sand. You see yourself in them, and them in yourself. Two realities, divided by a transparent wall, yet somehow touching. This is the invitation of the world behind the glass, to stand in the quiet and remember that life is bigger than your own narrow line of sight. To understand that even in a small, framed space, there can be an entire cosmos. To feel, if only for a moment, that the barrier between here and there is not as solid as it seems. Because in the end, glass is only sand, melted and reshaped, and sand is only the memory of ancient stone, and stone is only the memory of a star that burned long before you were born. Which means that even the glass between you and that drifting world is part of the same story. The story you and the fish in the water have always been telling together. The story of life finding a way to keep going, no matter the walls it encounters. Welcome to the world behind the glass. The lie begins long before you notice it. It doesn't arrive in a burst of noise or with a dramatic shattering of trust. It seeps in, quietly woven into the light, stitched into the angles of a reflection, folded into the way reality rearranges itself when seen through glass. A perfect lie isn't loud. It is measured, balanced, designed not to replace the truth, but to echo it so precisely that your mind, nose, and teeth feel the difference. It is not the invention of something new, but the shifting of something old by just enough to matter. The physics of a perfect lie is not unlike the physics of light itself. Consider this. A beam of light leaves an object, carrying with it every story of its color, texture, and shape. It travels faithfully, obedient to the laws of the universe, until somewhere between source and observer it meets a surface that changes its path. Not destroys it, not corrupts it entirely, but bends it, refracts it, redirects it in such a way that by the time it reaches your eyes, the message is still intact, but not true. The illusion works because your brain is trained to trust the messenger. Light does not lie, we think. Photons simply deliver what is. And yet, like words whispered in a crowded room, meaning can shift without anyone realizing it. A polished window, a lens with a slight imperfection, a ripple in the air from heat. Each one is a tiny conspirator in the rewriting of reality. Imagine you are standing in front of a museum display. Behind the glass sits an ancient artifact, its shape pristine, its colors rich, its details crisp, as though carved only yesterday. You lean closer, and the glass responds not with sound, but with optics. Its surface subtly doubles the sharpness, saturates the colors just a little more, softens the shadows so the object appears untouched by time. In that moment, you are not seeing the artifact as it is. You are seeing what the artifact wishes to be, a flawless version of itself. This is the first truth of the perfect lie. The closer it is to reality, the less you will question it. In physics, this principle has a cousin, the concept of near-perfect fidelity. Imagine a recording of a sound. If the copy is terrible, full of static, warped and distant too, immediately recognize it as fake. But if the copy is almost perfect, your brain slips into comfort. It fills in the gaps, corrects the imperfections on its own, and convinces you that what you hear must be the original. The same applies to sight. The human eye doesn't process every pixel of the world, it takes shortcuts. It relies on context, on expectation. The lie exploits this, hiding not in absence but in precision. It's too much sharpness where there should be blur, too much stillness where there should be motion. Like a photograph, where every face smiles just right, you sense something uncanny but cannot name it. A physicist once told me that the perfect lens is not the one that shows you the truth. It's the one that shows you what you want to believe is the truth. The laws of optics give us three primary tools to build such lies: reflection, refraction, and diffraction. Reflection sends light back to you, sometimes faithfully, sometimes warped. Sometimes mixed with images from another world, entirely the way a shop window shows you both the street outside and your own face, ghosted together. Refraction bends the path of light as it passes through a new medium, making straight lines curve, altering distances, changing depth. A straw in a glass of water is a lesson in miniature deceit. Diffraction scatters light into multiple paths, creating halos, doubling edges, painting rainbows where there should be none. Each of these can be harmless mere quirks of physics, or they can be crafted into something more deliberate. A stage magician's mirror trick, a security camera's fisheye lens. The shimmer of heat on asphalt tall lean on the same set of physical laws. The difference is intention. What makes a perfect lie perfect is not just the distortion, it is the harmony between truth and falsehood. Too much distortion, and the spell collapses. It's too little, and it fails to influence. The balance point lies in invisibility. The change must be present but undetectable. Consider the mirage. On a hot day, the air above the road bends light upward, reflecting the blue of the sky so perfectly that it becomes a shimmering pool in the distance. You know the road is dry. You know the water is impossible. Yet, for those few moments, your eyes drink it in as though it were real. Your mind holds both truths at once, unable to dismiss either. That is the second truth of the perfect lie. It does not seek to erase the truth. It seeks to sit beside it, equally convincing. The glass between you and reality is a perfect accomplice for this. Glass is trusted. It is invisible when clean, silent when still, and carries the weight of centuries of human familiarity. We use it to protect, to frame, to present. We assume it delivers what is behind it without alteration. And so, when it does alter, we rarely suspect it. Museums, aquariums, skyscraper windows, they all rely on glass, not merely as a barrier, but as a filter of experience. A fish behind glass is not just a fish, it is a fish slowed by water, compressed by perspective, lit from angles that make its scales flare like molten metal. A city seen from the 50th floor is not just a city, it is a miniature diorama, a glittering map beneath your feet. The glass does not lie loudly, but it edits. And in that editing, it shapes what you remember. There is a third truth to the perfect lie. It must tell you something you already half believe. Light, once altered, cannot be unaltered when it reaches you. Your brain receives it as complete, and if it fits your expectation, even barely it slides past your defenses. This is why stage illusions work better on people who want to be amazed, and why advertisements look more persuasive when they echo something you already desire. Why photographs on social media seem real when they mirror the aesthetic you've been conditioned to like. The lie is not built from nothing. It grows in the cracks of your trust. Perhaps this is why the world behind the glass feels so flawless. The fish never swim out of frame. The artifact never crumbles further. City skyline never shifts unexpectedly. Behind the glass, things hold still long enough for you to believe in them fully, and once you do, the physics has already done its work. The photons that reach your eyes are perfect messengers of an imperfect world, so perfect that you will never notice the difference. If truth is light traveling in a straight line, then the perfect lie is a gentle, to almost imperceptible bend in that line. A curve so slight that you don't realize you are walking in a circle until the scenery begins to repeat. And perhaps, in a way, that is the most elegant deception of all. The reflection begins long before the glass. It begins in the quiet darkness of your skull, where pulses of electricity leap from cell to cell like whispered secrets. A mirror may hang on the wall, gleaming in the morning light, but the real surface, the true reflective plane, lies deep within the folds of the brain. It is here, not on the silvered backing of glass, that the image of you is assembled. It is here that light, shape, and meaning are gathered into the shimmering illusion we call sight. A reflection is not simply what light bounces back to us, it is what the brain decides it should be. The photons that leave your face, strike the mirror, and return to your eyes are nothing more than messengers. They do not carry the smile, the curve of your jaw, the flicker of hesitation in your gaze. They carry only a chaotic storm of wavelengths, a pattern without meaning until the brain shapes it into something familiar. And in that shaping, the brain does not merely record. It edits, interprets, corrects, and sometimes even lies. Inside the retina, the story begins as chemistry. Millions of tiny photoreceptors, rods that hunger for dim light and cones that savor color catch the returning photons. In that instant, the light stops being light. It becomes electricity. No longer is it the gentle rain of photons from the mirror. It is now a crackling network of impulses, rushing through the optic nerve like rivers in flood. From here, the reflection is no longer outside you. It is within, running through a private landscape of neurons and synapses, invisible to any other eye. But the brain is not a passive receiver. It is a sculptor. When the optic signals reach the primary visual cortex, a strip of neural tissue at the back of your head, they arrive scrambled. One cluster of cells processes edges. Another detects motion. Others decode color, contrast, brightness. It is a strange fragmentation, as though the image of yourself were shattered into hundreds of tiny shards. And yet the brain does not stop at this fragmented view. Layer by layer, it reassembles them into something whole, something meaningful. You do not see yourself in the mirror as you truly are. You see yourself as the brain predicts you to be. This prediction happens in milliseconds, so swiftly that it feels instantaneous. But the truth is that your reflection lags behind reality. Every time you glance at the mirror, you are looking at a version of yourself from a fraction of a second ago. A ghost delayed by the speed of nerve conduction and cortical processing. You are always slightly in your own past. This delay may seem trivial, yet it speaks to a deeper mystery. You have never seen your true self. Every image you've known in mirrors, photographs, or memory has been filtered through the biases of perception. The left and right of your face are reversed in a mirror, but your brain quietly accepts this as natural. In a photograph, the reversal is gone, but you feel subtly alien. In memory, the image is fuzzier still, softened and reshaped by emotion, by self-narrative, by time. Each is a reflection, but each is also an invention. Our sense of self is stitched together from these inventions. Neuroscientists call this the body schema, the brain's internal model of the body's shape, size, and position. This schema is not fixed. It can be bent and altered. In the famous rubber hand illusion, a person can be made to feel that a fake hand is part of their body simply by stroking it in synchrony with their hidden real hand. The brain, eager to maintain coherence, will adopt the imposter limb into its self-image. So too with mirrors. The brain accepts the reflected figure as me, even when it differs subtly from reality. When you stand before a mirror, you are not seeing a thing. You are seeing a theory. Your brain's best guess at what is out there. Cross-checks the incoming light with past experiences, familiar shapes, and learned expectations. It smooths away inconsistencies. If the mirror is slightly warped, your mind will often correct the distortion without you noticing. If lighting hides a blemish, your brain fills in the missing detail. What you think of as objective seeing is really a negotiation between reality and expectation, and expectation is powerful. Consider the phenomenon of mirror self-recognition, tested in animals by marking their bodies with a spot of paint visible only in a reflection. Great apes, dolphins, elephants, magpies, they will touch or investigate the mark, indicating that they understand the reflection as themselves. This is not just vision. It is self-awareness. Yet even here, the brain must bridge the gap between seeing and knowing. The elephant's brain must translate the abstract flicker in the glass into the intimate fact, that is me. For humans, this translation happens so smoothly, we forget it is happening at all. As children, we must learn to recognize ourselves. Before about 18 months of age, most infants treat their reflection as another baby, a playmate behind a magical window. Then, one day, the realization arrives. The figure in the mirror moves when I move, looks where I look, blinks when I blink. A doorway opens. The birth of self-consciousness. From then on, the brain will forever pair the mirrored form with the idea of I. Yet the pairing is not perfect. There are moments when the brain falters. Stare into your own eyes in a mirror for several minutes, and strange things happen. Psychologists call it the strange face illusion. Your features seem to melt, distort, or transform into someone else entirely. The brain, deprived of change and variation, begins to hallucinate. It is as though the machinery of recognition loosens its grip, letting other possibilities slip in. Faces from memory, from dreams, from archetype, they leak into the present. The reflection becomes unstable, a reminder that the self you see is a construction, and that constructions can be undone. Even briefer, subtler glitches happen daily. Walk past a shop window and for an instant fail to recognize the person in the glass. See a photograph of yourself taken unexpectedly and feel a jolt of unfamiliarity. These are moments when the brain's prediction and the incoming image do not align perfectly. For a split second, the me in your mind does not match the me in the light. And in that gap, you glimpse the truth. The self is not a fixed, solid thing. It is a fluid arrangement, always negotiated, always revised. This fluidity can be unsettling, but it is also a gift. It allows the brain to adapt to change, to injury, to age, to transformation. The person in the mirror is not trapped in a single form. They shift subtly and endlessly in the brain's private gallery. This is why you can look at old photographs and feel both familiarity and strangeness. You are looking at a version of yourself your current brain no longer fully inhabits. That person is you, but not quite the same you who stands here now. The mirror, then, is less a truth teller than a collaborator in a complex fiction. Offers the raw material, light and shape. The brain offers the interpretation, identity, and meaning. Without the brain, a mirror would reflect only pattern and color, no different from the shimmer of light on water. Without the mirror, the brain would still imagine itself, still conjure a body to inhabit, but perhaps with less certainty. Together they create the illusion of a stable, knowable self. And so, when you gaze into your own eyes, you are looking not into glass, but into the theater of your mind. The stage is set with neural props, the occipital cortex painting colors, temporal lobes sketching faces, the parietal regions mapping the body's shape. The frontal cortex, ever the narrator, spins these into a coherent story. In this story, you are a single, continuous being. The mirror nods in agreement, though it knows you are, in truth, a shifting constellation. This is the quiet genius of the brain behind the reflection. It convinces you that you are whole, that the flicker of light on glass is you, that the delayed translated image is faithful, that the self you see will be the same tomorrow. But beneath the calm surface of recognition, the neurons are always at work, sculpting, revising, dreaming. The reflection you see is the brain's masterpiece, and like all masterpieces, it is as much imagination as it is reality. And so, each morning, you stand before the mirror and meet yourself again. Not the self you were yesterday, nor the self you will be tomorrow, but the self your brain has chosen for you today. It greets you with familiar eyes, a familiar tilt of the mouth, a familiar posture. You believe this self is solid, that it will last at least until night. But deep inside, the silent artisans of the cortex are already changing it, brushstroke by brushstroke. Tomorrow's reflection is already in the making. The mirror is a quiet conspirator. You approach it expecting truth, a perfect, loyal messenger of the world before you. But it has never promised you honesty. It offers you only an image, an echo of light arranged by laws of physics that care nothing for your sense of self. A mirror, by nature, is a translator. And like all translations, it carries distortions, subtle, invisible, and often so ingrained that you mistake them for reality itself. Stand before a mirror, and you are not where you appear to be. Your reflection seems to inhabit the same space you do, but it lives in a ghostly other world, a reverse dimension where left is right, right is left, and depth is an illusion. You lean forward, thinking you're moving toward yourself, but in the mirror's physics, your twin leans forward too, as if eager to meet you halfway. Yet no matter how close you get, the space between you is infinite. You will never touch. Even the shape of your face is suspect here. Mirrors, especially the imperfect, mass-produced sheets that line bathrooms and bedrooms, do not simply bounce light back in perfect fidelity. The slightest curvature in the glass, the thinnest imperfection in the reflective coating, will bend your world. A mirror that bows inward will slim your jawline. One that swells outward will widen your cheeks. These distortions are often too subtle for your conscious mind to notice, but not too subtle for your subconscious. You may walk away from such a mirror feeling just a little more beautiful, or a little less, without ever realizing that your mood was altered by the physics of imperfection. Even a flawless laboratory-grade mirror does not save you from distortion, because the greatest shift comes not from the glass, but from your mind. Your brain is a relentless editor. It has stored a lifetime of memories of your own face, each from a perspective you never see in reality. You know yourself as the mirrored you, the one who always faces you with reversed symmetry. To the rest of the world, you are a face they have never seen flipped. This is why when you catch your reflection in a candid photograph, it feels wrong. Not because the camera has lied, but because it has told the truth in a language you have not learned to love. Mirrors can bend not just your appearance, but your perception of truth itself. The 20th century psychologist Jacques Lacan famously used the mirror stage to describe a crucial moment in human development, when an infant first recognizes their reflection as themselves. That moment is a kind of gentle betrayal, because what the infant sees is an idealized, unified whole, a complete body image that does not yet exist in the messy, fragmented sensations of early life. The mirror offers a self that is stable and coherent, but in doing so, it plants the first seed of dissonance. You begin life believing in an image that will never be perfectly you. Funhouse mirrors take this distortion into open exaggeration, warping your body into impossible forms, stretching your legs until they seem to reach the ceiling, cutting your torso until it feels like a sheet of paper, ballooning your head into a floating orb. We laugh at these shapes because they are absurd, but they reveal something important. All mirrors are funhouse mirrors, only some wear the disguise of accuracy. Even the bathroom mirror is bending light, bending truth, bending you. And then there is the light itself, that untrustworthy traveler. In a mirror, light obeys the law of reflection. The angle it arrives is the angle it departs. But along the way, its intensity, color, and clarity are altered by the surface it meets. In the silvered back of a modern mirror, certain wavelengths may be absorbed more than others, subtly shifting your skin tone. Some mirrors add a faint green cast, others brighten whites while muting reds. None of this registers consciously, yet all of it changes how you feel about the face you see. Consider, too, the way mirrors distort time. The light that makes your reflection takes just billionths of a second to return to your eyes. But even this is enough to remind us that what we see is never truly now. Every reflection is already the past. The image you see is not you in this moment, but you in a moment that has already vanished. For all its stillness, the mirror is always a portal into what is gone. When mirrors distort reality, they do more than alter physics. They alter identity. A reflection can make you fall in love with yourself or erode your confidence. It can offer comfort in loneliness or amplify your isolation. We live in a time when mirrors are not just sheets of glass, but glowing rectangles. Screens that reflect our faces through lenses and algorithms, warping them with filters, smoothing skin, widening eyes, narrowing jaws. Here, distortion becomes deliberate. The funhouse has gone digital, and its mirrors no longer wait for you to approach. They follow you in your pocket, in your palm, in your own hand. The ancient myths understood this danger. In Greek legend, Narcissus was cursed not simply because he saw himself, but because he believed what he saw was the whole truth. The water that held his reflection shimmered and shifted with every ripple. He could never truly know his own face. In a way, mirrors have not changed. They shimmer in the light, always hiding the invisible, the unseen back of your head, the tilt of your jaw from another's angle, the subtle play of expression that others notice before you do. And yet perhaps this is the gift of distortion. Perhaps it is better that mirrors lie, because in their lies they give us space to imagine ourselves differently. A distorted reflection is not just a mistake. It is a doorway into possibilities. It whispers, "You are more than what I show you." And in a world where truth is rarely perfect, perhaps that is the most honest thing a mirror can say. The mirror, in the end, is not a fixed truth, but a shifting language. It speaks in light, in angles, in imperfections, in translations. It invites you to step close, to study, to believe, but it also dares you to doubt. For when mirrors distort reality, they are not simply bending the world. They are bending the story you tell yourself about who you are. And maybe, just maybe, that story is the one reflection worth keeping. From the moment human beings learn to see their own reflection not in a polished piece of metal or a crafted pane of glass, but in the trembling surface of a still pond, there has been a suspicion that what looks back at us is more than just light bouncing from one surface to another. The reflection, so perfect yet untouchable, carried with it a whisper of something otherworldly. It seemed not simply a mimicry of the self, but a threshold thin as a membrane between this reality and another. Cultures across the world, and across time, have regarded mirrors not as mere objects, but as dangerous and powerful devices. They were doors without hinges, windows without frames, holding the potential to open into realms unseen. What is striking is how universal this belief has been weathered in the misty mountains of China. The temples of Mesoamerica, the courts of medieval Europe, or the ritual fires of African tribes' mirrors, or any object capable of reflection, have been imbued with the aura of portals. The question was never whether they could open, but what might come through if they did. In many ancient traditions, to gaze into a reflective surface was to look across the veil separating the living from the dead. In Mesoamerican cultures, obsidian mirrors were polished to a black, liquid darkness not to see one's face clearly, but to peer into the invisible. The Aztecs revered Tezcatlipoca, the smoke and mirror god, who held in his obsidian disk the power to reveal the future, summon visions, and even reshape reality. For them, the mirror was not passive, it was alive, an active eye that could look back, perhaps with more intent than the one who stared into it. Similarly, in ancient China, bronze mirrors were believed to repel evil spirits not because they reflected light, but because they reflected truth. A demon, it was said, could not bear to see its real form and would flee at the sight of itself. This belief wove into architecture. Mirrors were sometimes placed facing a door to prevent malevolent forces from entering. But just as the mirror could repel, it could also invite. There were tales that during certain rituals, mirrors became gateways to the spirit realm. The polished bronze was no longer inert metal, but a shimmering skin stretched between two worlds. Across the seas in Japan, the Yatta, no. Kagami, one of the three sacred treasures of the imperial regalia, was more than an object of prestige. In Shinto mythology, it was the mirror that lured the sun goddess Amaterasu out of her cave, restoring light to the world. When she peered into it, she was captivated not by the mirror's craftsmanship, but by the mystery of the reflection. It was not a simple likeness. It was as if she was seeing a self she had never known before. Perhaps the gods themselves felt the pull of that other place, the quiet, shimmering dimension that lies just past the glass. In European folklore, mirrors took on an even more unnerving quality. Medieval superstition held that a mirror could trap a soul, which is why in many traditions the mirrors in a house were covered after a death. The logic was simple yet chilling. If the deceased soul lingered too long, might mistake the reflection for a doorway and step inside, becoming forever imprisoned behind the silvered surface. A covered mirror was not merely an act of mourning, it was a sealing of the gate, preventing accidental crossings. But while death made mirrors dangerous, love made them treacherous in other ways. The ancient Greek myth of Narcissus is perhaps the most famous tale of a reflection's fatal power. Though not a mirror in the literal sense, the still water became a perfect glass, one that showed him a beauty he could not turn away from. In that shimmering trap, the reflection was both lure and prison, pulling him away from the living world, until he faded into a flower on the water's edge. Here, the reflective surface was no benevolent guide, but a siren song from a realm that offered only illusion. In African and Caribbean traditions, mirrors often appeared in rituals to connect with ancestors. Certain voodoo ceremonies involve placing a mirror on an altar so that the spirits might see themselves and be called forth. The reflection was thought to act as a pathway and alignment point, where the world of the living and the spirit world overlapped. These were not passive gazings, but negotiations with forces unseen, where the mirror was the meeting ground. Even in more recent centuries, the idea of mirrors as portals persisted in the language of magic. Victorian scrying mirrors, often made from polished obsidian or black glass, are not used to check one's appearance but to enter a trance. Peering into other times, other places, or entirely other realms. The magician John Dee, advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, famously used such a mirror and obsidian piece from Mexico to communicate with angels. Yet accounts of his sessions also hint at something far more ambiguous. So if the mirror were a channel not only for heavenly voices, but for any intelligence capable of reaching back. Mirrors have always been objects of symmetry, but their mythic power is not symmetrical, is directional. You may look in, but something might also look out. This idea, subtle yet persistent, shaped countless stories. In Russian folklore, mirrors left uncovered at night could invite mirror folk into the home beings who looked identical to the people inside. But were not them. They might step through, take your place, or simply watch from just beyond the glass. The reflection here is not an echo, but a shadow self biding its time. The portal idea finds a curious echo in modern horror and fantasy. The mirror world appears again and again in literature and film, a place that looks like ours, but slightly altered. Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass imagines stepping through into a whimsical, inverted land, but beneath its playfulness lies the same old unease. Once you cross, you may not return the same. Horror films take it further, mirrors as traps, mirrors as predators, mirrors as silent patient gateways to something that hungers. Why does this imagery hold such power over us? Perhaps it is because a mirror already feels like an unnatural space. Light is bent and returned to us in an instant, showing us something so utterly accurate yet so fundamentally untouchable. Our eyes register it as real, yet our hands pass through empty air when we try to touch it. It is the perfect illusion, and illusions always breed suspicion. The ancient myths, for all their variety, share a common truth. A mirror is never just a mirror. It is a threshold. And thresholds in every culture are dangerous places. They are where the rules blur, where categories life and death, self and other, here and there, are no longer certain. The act of looking into a mirror becomes a quiet risk, a voluntary step toward the unknown. You offer the mirror your image, and it offers you a mystery in return. It is tempting to dismiss these old fears as superstition, relics of a time before science explained light and optics. Yet even today, in the privacy of a dimly lit room, most people would feel an instinctive unease staring into a mirror for too long. We cannot shake the sense that perhaps, if we stared just a little longer, something would shift in the glass. It's not a trick of the eyes, but a change in reality itself, one that could let us slip through, or let something slip out. In this way, mirrors remain modern portals, not necessarily to other dimensions in a literal sense, but to the uncharted territories of the mind and imagination. When you gaze into one, you are standing at the edge of a myth that stretches back thousands of years. Whether it is the obsidian of the Aztecs, the polished bronze of the Han Dynasty, or the everyday glass in your own home, the surface whispers the same ancient possibility. This is not the only world. So even in an age of optics and physics, the mirror holds its place as both a symbol and a tool. Reminder that the line between reality and the other world is thinner than we dare believe, and sometimes all it takes. To find it is the courage to look too long, too deeply into the silver dark. There is a quiet moment most of us know well. You pass by a shop window at night, its glass darkened by the absence of light within. At first you think you were looking through it, at the faint outline of a chair, the shelves, the shadowed room beyond. But then the street lamp catches your face, and suddenly you are looking at yourself. Yes, not a full, proper reflection. Just a ghost of your features hovering there, barfed from the world outside and half anchored in the glass. You look, and in that split second, something curious happens. You do not simply see yourself, you meet yourself. And in that meeting lies an ancient mystery of human psychology. For most animals, sight is a way to survive, to spot food, to avoid predators, to read the wind in the rustling of grass. But for us, sight has evolved into something far stranger. It is a way to know ourselves. Our eyes, so often trained on the horizon, can also turn inward in their function. Not literally, of course, but metaphorically. We can see ourselves as if we were other people. This ability is neither trivial nor guaranteed. Many creatures live and die without any concept of self-reflection, without the mental leap of knowing that is me, the evolutionary milestone of mere recognition. Sometimes tested by placing a mark on an animal's face and seeing if it tries to remove it upon seeing its reflection, is rare. Chimpanzees have it. Dolphins have it. Magpies have it. But it is not universal, not even in humans at birth. Infants do not come into the world with a ready-made self-image. In the earliest months, a baby sees the world as an undivided ocean of sensations, light and sound and touch, with no fixed borders. They do not yet stand apart from the world. They are the world. But somewhere between 18 and 24 months, a profound shift occurs. The mirror stage, as psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan famously called it. Imagine it. A toddler before a mirror, laughing or babbling at the moving figure before them. At first, they may treat it as another child, a companion to touch and interact with. But then, a moment of recognition, a spark. As their mind threads the connection between the face in the mirror and the sensations in their own body. This is not merely a cute milestone. It is the first time they encounter themselves as an object in the world, as something visible from the outside. The mirror doesn't just show them their image, shows them their existence. And with that comes the seeds of identity. From that day on, every time we see ourselves, we are building and refining this inner picture. We carry not one self, but many shaped by a different lens. The self we feel inside is not always the self we see outside, and the self others see is different again. Mirrors remind us of this multiplicity. When you look into a mirror, your brain is not simply processing light and shape. It is pulling memories from a vast archive how you looked yesterday, last year, as a child. The times you caught yourself unprepared. The times you studied yourself with care. These recollections blend with the present image, producing a complex, shifting narrative. This is me, but there is a disquieting truth here. The face you know so well, the one you claim is yours. A construct of familiarity, not reality. In the mirror, you see a reversed image, subtly unlike what others see. You become accustomed to your mirrored self, so much so that photographs which capture the true orientation can look strange or even unsettling. Psychologists have a name for this: the mirror exposure effect. We tend to like what we see most often. For you, that is your mirrored face. For your friends, it is your unmirrored one. This explains the odd phenomenon of disliking your own photos, even when others find them flattering. And yet the mirror is not always a gentle companion. For some, it is a critic, magnifying every perceived flaw. Body image, self-esteem, even mood can shift under its gaze. What you see is filtered not just through optics, but through emotion. If you feel tired, the mirror may confirm it. If you feel confident, the mirror may agree. In psychological terms, the mirror acts as a feedback loop, one that can either reinforce or challenge the self-concept. A person with body dysmorphic disorder may see distortions no one else can, their mind overpainting reality with imagined imperfections. In such cases, the mirror becomes a battleground between perception and truth. But the mirror can also be a place of grounding. Therapists sometimes use mirror exposure therapy to help people reconnect with their physical selves after trauma, illness, or emotional distress. Standing before a mirror, looking steadily into one's own eyes, can be a slow, difficult act of acceptance. In such moments, the mirror is not a portal to vanity or judgment, it is a doorway to self-compassion. Perhaps this is why mirrors have always been tinged with the sacred in human culture. Not because they are magical in themselves, but because they bring us to the threshold between the inner and outer worlds. The surface of a mirror is like the surface of a still pond. It reflects not just light, but a question: who are you? When you answer that question, you do not answer with the sum of your features or the symmetry of your face. You answer with something wordless. The weight of your memories, the tone of your voice, the way your body has carried you through time. You answer with the feeling of being you. So each time you meet your own gaze, you are also meeting every version of yourself that has ever lived: the child who first touched the mirror, the teenager who practiced smiles before a date, the adult who checked for signs of aging, the person you will one day become. Mirrors, then, are not just glass and silver. They are instruments of self-awareness. They teach us that seeing ourselves is never passive, is an active, creative act. We are constantly rewriting the story of who we are, and the mirror is a silent collaborator in that work. In its calm, steady reflection, we are reminded that the self is not fixed. It shifts and shimmers like light on water, always changing, yet somehow continuous. We may never see ourselves exactly as we are, but in trying and gazing and searching, we come closer to understanding. And perhaps that is enough. Because in the psychology of seeing yourself, the truth is not in the image at all. It is in the quiet pause after you look away, when the reflection fades, but the awareness lingers when you carry that sense of I am back into the moving, breathing world. There is a quiet magic in the way our eyes can be fooled. Not the crude magic of stage curtains and smoke, but the gentler, stranger magic of light itself, how it bends, scatters, and whispers little lies into the mind. And perhaps the greatest trick of all is that these deceptions are not truly in the world, but in us. The mirror does not move. The water does not change its depth. The hallway is not longer than it was a moment ago. And yet, when our senses drink in the light, our mind, with absolute confidence, builds a world that isn't quite there. We are taught to think of sight as a direct truth-teller, that our eyes are windows, and through them reality pours in untouched. But sight is not a photograph. It is a painting hurriedly and endlessly redrawn by the brain. And as with all paintings, the artist can be misled by shadows, or be convinced to add what was never there, or leave out what was vital. The story of optical illusions is not the story of human gullibility, but the story of how perception itself works, and why it must sometimes deceive us to work at all. It begins, as so many visual tricks do, with the bending of light. Imagine a stick dipped into a clear pond. From above, it appears to snap at the water's surface, a sharp kink where the air meets the liquid, yet pull it out, and it is perfectly straight. This is refraction, the slowing and bending of light as it moves from one medium to another. The brain has learned to interpret straight paths of light as straight lines in space, but here, the light comes from the stick, dives into water, slows, and emerges toward your eyes along a bent path. Your mind, having never been told the whole truth, draws what it thinks is there. Refraction can make an oasis shimmer in the desert, can make a coin in a fountain seem closer than it is, can even hide a ship over the horizon by bending light away from your gaze. To the eye, such distortions are not wrong. They are perfectly reasonable guesses, given the evidence available. Other illusions depend on our brain's obsession with patterns. Our visual system evolved not just to see, but to predict. The light hitting the retina is messy, incomplete, and ever-changing. To survive, the brain became a master of filling gaps, of recognizing shapes from fragments, of seeing edges where none exists. The Kanissa triangle is one of the simplest demonstrations. 3 Pac-Man shapes, mouths open, placed in a circle. 3 V-shaped wedges. Put them together, and the mind swears it sees a bright white triangle hovering over the others. A triangle that is not drawn, shaded, or outlined. It exists only in your head. Why does this happen? Because the brain is convinced that such an arrangement should contain a triangle, and so it sketches one in without asking. Most of the time, this predictive instinct is a gift. It lets us spot a predator in the grass or a face in the shadows. But here, stripped of survival stakes, it becomes a charming little hallucination. Some illusions toy not with edges but with motion. Stand still on a train as the one beside it begins to move. For a heartbeat, your body insists you are the one sliding backwards. This is the Vection effect. The brain's habit of blending visual motion with bodily motion, it cannot help it. In nature, large moving patterns in your visual field often do mean you are moving. Your inner ear may protest, but sight is persuasive, and for a moment, you believe the lie. In art galleries, you might encounter the enigma illusion, a static image of concentric circles overlaid with thin radial lines. Gaze at its center, and the rings seem to swirl gently as if stirred by invisible hands. This is no trick ink. It is the microsaccades of your eyes themselves, tiny movements in your gaze, amplified by the pattern into a sensation of motion. You are both the audience and the cause of the illusion. Then there are illusions of scale and depth, which can make a flat surface into a three-dimensional landscape. The Ames room is a masterwork in this craft. Viewed through a peephole, it seems an ordinary square room, placed a people inside, one in the left corner, one in the right, and one will tower like a giant, while the other shrinks to a child's height. Yet the room is no square at all. Its walls are trapezoids. Its floor slopes sharply, and every line is drawn to feed your mind's assumptions about perspective. Our brains expect parallel lines to converge in the distance. We expect door frames to be upright and ceilings level. Feed us those cues, even if they are false, and we will believe anything. The same principles explain why moonrises seem impossibly large on the horizon. Our mind compares the moon to familiar objects nearby trees, rooftops, mountains, and decides it must be huge. Once high overhead, it floats in the empty sky with nothing to measure against. And so it shrinks, though in truth it has never changed in size. Some optical deceptions are so woven into our biology that they border on inevitability. The blind spot in each eye is one example. Where the optic nerve leaves the retina, there are no light-detecting cells at all, a literal hole in your vision. And yet you never see it. Your brain fills it in seamlessly with guessed colors, textures, and even moving objects. It is an illusion so constant that you cannot turn it off. Similarly, the colors you see are not the colors of the world, but the brain's interpretation of wavelengths, heavily influenced by context. The famous internet dress, was it blue and black or white and gold? Was not a frivolous puzzle. It revealed that the brain does not merely read color. It adjusts it based on the presumed lighting of the scene. Two people with different unconscious assumptions can look at the same light and see entirely different hues. Even shadows can mislead. In Edward Adelson's checker, Shadow Illusion, two squares on a chessboard, one in light, are exactly the same shade of gray. And yet the shadowed square appears lighter because the brain knows that shadows darken surfaces and automatically corrects for them. It is a correction so strong that even when shown the truth, we struggle to see it. Mirrors, too, are fertile ground for optical deception. Not just in the myths where they are gates to other realms, but in the science of how they can subtly alter perception. A mirror reverses front and back, but not up and down, a fact that many people misremember. When placed at certain angles, it can create infinite corridors of reflection, each smaller and fainter than the last. In funhouses, warped mirrors stretch and squash bodies, exploiting our expectation that straight vertical lines mean truth. Perhaps the most unsettling illusions are those that take place entirely inside the mind, needing no clever geometry or bent light. The Troxler effect is one. Fix your gaze on a single point, and objects in your peripheral vision will slowly fade and vanish. The brain, deciding they are unchanging and irrelevant, filters them out. The world around you dissolves into nothing, as if reality itself were melting away. And then there is pareidolia, the instinct to see faces where there are none. A power socket with two holes and a screw becomes a startled expression. Clouds take the shape of animals. The moon's craters arrange themselves into a calm, watchful face. It is not madness, but a deep evolutionary adaptation. To see a predator's face in the shadows was once to survive. Even now, this ancient reflex colors our vision with imagined companions. What these illusions teach us is humbling. They reveal that sight is not passive. We do not simply receive the world. We build it, moment by moment, from scraps of light and memory. Every second, the mind is not just seeing, but interpreting, correcting, predicting, and sometimes inventing. The illusions are not errors in a broken system. They are the side effects of a brilliantly efficient one. A system that must guess quickly, because hesitation could once have meant death. The price of such speed is the occasional phantom triangle, the bending of a stick in water, or the impossible size of a moonrise. And perhaps that is why illusions hold such fascination for us. They are gentle reminders that reality, as we experience it, is a collaboration between the world and our mind. We walk through a reality that is part physics, part dream, and the border between them is as thin as a ripple in a pond. Somewhere deep in that borderland lies a simple truth. We do not just live in the world. We live in the story our mind tells us about it. And sometimes that story is a trick of the light, a deception so beautiful we cannot help but believe. Once upon a time, mirrors were nothing more than still ponds, polished metal, and fleeting glances into the self. They showed us what sunlight and shadow allowed, a reflection fixed in the present moment, fading the instant you looked away. But in the age of technology, mirrors have evolved. They are no longer passive slabs of glass. They are thinking surfaces, watching, recording, and reshaping the very idea of what it means to see yourself. A modern mirror can do far more than simply return your face to you. It can know your name, remember your habits, predict your moods, and whisper the weather forecast as you brush your hair. It can become a trainer, a stylist, a doctor. When you stand before it, you are no longer alone. You are conversing with an interface. a companion woven from sensors, algorithms, and light. The transformation begins quietly, almost invisibly. The silvered glass, once inert, now hums with circuitry. A layer of touch sensitivity waits for your fingertip. Cameras hide within the frame, not to spy but to see, to interpret your posture, your skin tone, the way your eyes blink when you are tired. A screen beneath the glass blends pixels with reality, allowing both your reflection and an entire digital world to exist in the same space. And in that subtle layering, a strange alchemy takes place. The reflection is no longer bound to physics alone. It can be augmented, enhanced, even reimagined. You can try on clothes without wearing them, see how a haircut will suit you before scissors ever touch your hair, or watch your face age decades in seconds as predictive software runs forward in time. These are not tricks of the Funhouse. They are projections of data, possibilities crystallizing into images before your eyes. But technology does not simply change the mirror, it changes the act of looking. A mirror used to be a private ritual, an exchange between you and your silent double. Now in smart displays, augmented reality glass, and camera-linked surfaces. There is a third presence, the invisible hand of the machine, interpreting, correcting, and suggesting. It means that your reflection is no longer entirely your own. It is partly a creation of code. There is a deep psychological shift in this. Traditional mirror presents a truthful lie, a reversed version of reality, untouched by opinion. But a technological mirror can carry biases, intentions, and agendas. It can decide through the quiet logic of algorithms how you should look. It can smooth a wrinkle, lighten a shadow, or brighten your eyes in real time. You may not even notice the edits. They become the new baseline for your reflection. And then, when you meet your face in an unfiltered surface, reality itself can feel somehow wrong. It is a subtle rearrangement of perception. The human brain is already wired to adapt quickly to changes in appearance. When mirrors join forces with technology, that adaptation can become a kind of dependency.
As
You begin to crave the optimized version of yourself, the one who lives in the screen. The raw reflection, the one that existed before pixels, starts to feel incomplete, like an early draft in need of revision. Yet there is wonder here too. Medical technology uses mirrors of light, scanners, and imaging devices to see beneath the skin, revealing blood flow, bone structure, and disease in its earliest stages. Astronomers build colossal mirrors of glass and metal to see into the farthest reaches of the universe, collecting light that has traveled billions of years to find us. And in laboratories, engineers create nanoscopic mirrors that bend light in ways nature never intended, opening doorways into quantum realities. In these realms, mirrors are no longer limited to human vanity. They become instruments of discovery, stretching our senses beyond their natural limits. You can look into a technological mirror and see not just yourself, but your cells, your heartbeat, even the dance of molecules in your blood. You can peer into a telescope and see galaxies whose light began its journey before Earth even formed. The fusion of mirrors and technology is also rewriting memory. A mirror today can record every glance, every pose, every shift in expression, creating a visual diary of your existence. It can store your reflection over years, letting you compare your present self to every past self that ever stood before it. It can reveal, without mercy or sentiment, the changes time has written into your skin. And it can archive those images in clouds of data that will outlive you. Perhaps the most curious development is the mirror that doesn't need you at all. Artificial intelligence can generate a reflection of you from photographs, text descriptions, or even your voice. It can create a moving, speaking version of you that responds as you would, a reflection freed from the physical laws of light and glass. Such digital doubles are no longer reflections in the traditional sense. They are avatars, shadows of identity that can persist without the body that inspired them. And this leads to a philosophical riddle. When technology makes mirrors that can remember, predict, and create new versions of you, which reflection is the most real? The one that light gives you in this moment? The one the algorithm perfects? The one it invents from scratch? Or the one stored in its archives, a ghost from years ago? In a way, technology has made mirrors less like windows and more like portals. Not just showing you where you are, but where you've been, where you might go, and even where you might never be. A single sheet of augmented glass can become a telescope, microscope, time machine, and oracle. But even now, with all the layers of code and glass, a mirror remains a mirror. Beneath the flicker of pixels, there is still that ancient dance of light and shadow, photons bouncing back to meet the eyes that sent them out. The technology may enhance, filter, and reinterpret, but the fundamental act is the same as it was in the first puddle that ever reflected a human face. And perhaps that is the quiet truth in this merging of old and new, that no matter how advanced our mirrors become, they will always be part science and part spell. They will still ask the same question they have asked for millennia. Who are you really? The answer may now come with augmented layers, biometric scans, and predictive models. But somewhere behind the data, there will always be the flicker of recognition, the human gasp of seeing yourself. The future of mirrors is not a replacement for the past, but an expansion of it. The polished silver will remain, but around it will bloom worlds of light and code, infinite versions of you suspended in glass. And as you stand before them, watching technology turn reflection into something alive, you may realize that you are not just looking into a mirror anymore. You are stepping into a conversation between matter and memory, between who you are and who you might become, a dialogue written in photons, pixels, and the quiet breath of your own gaze. If you think of it, a mirror is not just a piece of glass. It is a story, a metaphor, a conversation between light and matter, between the self you think you know and the one you have yet to meet. For thousands of years, humans have gazed into polished bronze, still water, or silver-backed glass, and thought they were simply seeing their face. But the mirror has always been more than a tool. It is a riddle, an invitation to contemplate identity, truth, and illusion. When you look into a mirror, you do not only see yourself. You see the way the world frames you, the way reality edits you, the way light chooses what to tell and what to keep hidden. The metaphor begins in the stillness of the surface. The mirror offers you an image that follows your every move, perfectly synchronized, yet reversed in a way your mind never quite feels comfortable with. We accept that left becomes right and right becomes left, yet somewhere deep inside, we know that this is not exactly how the world sees us. The mirror becomes a reminder. You never see yourself the way others see you. Your reflection is a translation faithful in its lines, perhaps, but never quite in its meaning. In literature, the mirror is often a symbol of self-examination, of truth-seeking. It stands for the courage to face oneself without disguise, without the soft lens of memory or the selective focus of the mind. But this courage is not always rewarded. Sometimes the mirror shows what we have been avoiding, wrinkles that were not there yesterday, a sadness in the eyes we thought we had hidden, or the faint shadow of a person we no longer recognize. And yet, there is an odd tenderness in that exposure. The mirror holds up not just the image, but the journey that shaped it. It tells us without judgment, this is you, all of you, as you are now. Philosophers have long been fascinated by the mirror's duality. On one hand, it is the simplest, most honest object in the world. It merely reflects what is before it. On the other, it is the most deceptive, for what it shows is not the thing itself, but an image of it. Plato might have reminded us that a mirror can only give us shadows of truth, never truth itself. Descartes, in turn, might have pointed out that a reflection raises the same doubts as the senses. If all you see is a surface, how can you trust what lies beyond? In dreams and myths, the mirror becomes even more slippery. In folklore, it is often a portal, a threshold, between the known and the unknown. In Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, the mirror leads Alice into a reversed world, where logic bends and rules fold in on themselves. In other traditions, mirrors are said to trap souls, to hold on to fragments of life, or to reveal spirits invisible to the naked eye. The metaphor deepens. What is a mirror if not a reminder that reality itself might be just another reflection, and that somewhere behind the glass there is a truer world waiting to be found? But perhaps the most powerful metaphor of the mirror lies in its demand for reciprocity. You cannot look into a mirror without it looking back. This is why, in art and psychology alike, mirrors are used to explore the nature of the self as both subject and object. To see yourself in a mirror is to step outside yourself, to become both observer and observed. This self-awareness can be liberating. It can give you the distance to understand your own patterns, habits, and emotions. But it can also be unsettling, as it reminds you that you are never fully private, even to yourself. The mirror also teaches us about perspective. If you move, the image moves. If you turn away, it vanishes. Life is much the same. The way we see ourselves is dependent on where we stand and what light falls upon us. Change the angle, and the meaning changes. This is why mirrors in poetry often symbolize transformation. Just as silvered glass can be clear in one moment and dark in the next, our understanding of ourselves shifts with time, with experience, with mood. The reflection is never fixed. In science, the mirror metaphor extends beyond the personal into the cosmic. Astronomers peer into giant mirrors to see the light of galaxies billions of years old. The James Webb Space Telescope, for example, uses its segmented golden mirrors to gather whispers of ancient starlight. Stretching the metaphor of self-reflection into the realm of universal reflection, the universe, too, is looking back at itself, through us. In that sense, we are mirrors for the cosmos, a way for matter to observe its own unfolding story. And yet mirrors are not always gentle. They can be ruthless truth-tellers, confronting us with the parts of ourselves we wish to hide. This is why so many cultures have used them in rituals of truth, confession, and purification. In some traditions, a person must gaze into a mirror before death to make peace with the self they have been. In others, a mirror is covered when someone dies to prevent the soul from being trapped or confused. The symbolism is rich, layered, and at times contradictory. Mirrors are both gateways and barriers, both friends and strangers. Artists often use mirrors to question reality. In paintings, a mirror can expand a scene, show a hidden figure, or hint at an unseen presence. Las Meninas plays with this idea masterfully, as the mirror in the background reflects the king and queen, making the viewer wonder who is truly at the center of the scene. In cinema, mirrors are tools of suspense, revelation, and transformation. A character catches a glimpse of something unexpected in the glass, and everything changes. Psychology has its own mirror stories. The mirror stage in developmental theory suggests that when infants first recognize themselves in a reflection, they begin to form a sense of self, a moment of realization that is both empowering and fragmenting. So they see a whole unified image, but feel the gap between that image and their own lived experience. In adulthood, we revisit this gap whenever we catch sight of ourselves unexpectedly and feel, for a fleeting second, like we are looking at someone else. In relationships, the mirror metaphor appears again and again. We say that others mirror us when they reflect our emotions, attitudes, or behaviors. We choose friends, partners, and communities partly because they show us something of ourselves, something we like, or something we wish to become. But mirrors in human form can also reveal traits we resist acknowledging. Sometimes we dislike someone not because of who they are, but because they reflect back the parts of ourselves we do not wish to see. Even language mirrors itself. In poetry, a line can reflect another, reversing its meaning or deepening it. In conversation, words bounce between people, shaped and reshaped by tone, intent, and memory. The mirror becomes not just a physical object, but a way of thinking, of structuring experience. Ultimately, the mirror, as a metaphor, is about awareness of self, of truth, of the fact that we live in a world of reflections, both literal and symbolic. Every story, every relationship, every scientific observation is in some way a mirror held up to something else. And every time we look, we are changed not because the mirror changes, but because we do. The next time you stand before a mirror, linger for a moment. Forget about checking your hair or adjusting your clothes. Instead, look into your own eyes and ask, who is looking back? Is it the person you were yesterday? The one you hope to be tomorrow? Or is it something larger, a fragment of the universe, momentarily aware of itself, caught in the infinite play of light and shadow? And when you turn away, remember this: the mirror keeps your image for only a moment, but the metaphor lingers. It follows you into your thoughts, into your dreams, into the way you see others. For in the end, life itself is a mirror. What you see depends not just on what stands before you, but on how you choose to see it. There comes a moment, quiet, unannounced, when the mirror in front of us is not merely glass, becomes a border. It's not the kind you cross in a single step, but one you linger at, knowing that on the other side waits something you will never entirely touch again. This is the moment of looking one last time. It happens in many forms. A traveler glances back at the place they've lived their whole life just before boarding the train. A parent watches their child disappear into the crowd, knowing that the shape of their relationship has shifted forever. An astronaut peers out the small, round window of a spacecraft, watching Earth recede into the black, the blues, and whites, shrinking into a fragile dot. In each case, the eyes are mirrors, the moment is suspended, and the heart feels the strange weight of farewell. When we look for the last time, our perception becomes strangely sharper. The air seems denser, the light more intricate, as if every photon is reluctant to let us go. Scientists sometimes describe memory as a compression algorithm, reducing the flood of experiences into the most potent fragments, storing them in high resolution. But the last look is different. It feels like the opposite of compression, it's expansion. Every detail blooms. You notice the exact shade of rust on the gate, the way a shadow curls around the base of a lamppost, the faint scent of damp stone. Your mind, knowing it must let go, holds on with both hands. And here's the curious thing. The mirror itself, the metaphorical one we carry inside, is not neutral in this process. But it bends reality. Neuroscience tells us that when we expect a moment to be final, our brain's emotional centers ignite, sending ripples into the hippocampus, altering how we store the scene. We do not record it as it is, but as it feels. The glass between us and the moment becomes a lens, distorting, beautifying, sometimes even softening the rough edges of what we see. That's why looking back on the last time often feels dreamlike, because it was, in part, created by the mind as much as it was observed by the eyes. There is an ancient Japanese word for this, mono no aware, the gentle sadness at the impermanence of things. It is not just grief at endings, but a gratitude for their fleeting beauty. It recognizes that nothing is more exquisite than something you know you cannot keep. Looking one last time is an act soaked in mono no aware. It is the realization that the image before you, whether reflected in an actual mirror or simply imprinted in the gaze, is already dissolving into the past. Mirrors have always carried the weight of this symbolism. In mythology, they are sometimes portals to the afterlife, sometimes traps for the soul, sometimes tools for revelation. But perhaps their deepest function is more intimate. They teach us to pause. When you look into a mirror, knowing it may be the last time you see that version of yourself, you cannot help but look harder. You see not only the face, but the journey. You see the fine lines carved by years of laughter and loss, the shadows under the eyes from nights spent chasing dreams or holding grief. You see yourself as an artifact of time, beautiful, not despite the changes, but because of them. Astronomers, too, speak of mirrors when they speak of telescopes. The great observatories of the world, Keck, VLT, James Webb, are mirrors aimed not at us, but at the universe. They collect light that has traveled for millions or billions of years, carrying images of galaxies that may no longer even exist. In a way, each observation is a last look. We are not just seeing them as they were, we are witnessing a ghost of light that will never be repeated. Perhaps this is why space imagery moves us so deeply. It is not only the beauty of the stars, but the awareness that each frame is a farewell to a moment in cosmic history. Even our planet gives us last looks. Glaciers retreat and reveal faces we will never see again. Old forests fall, their rings recording centuries of silent witness. Coral reefs bleach, losing their color in a slow goodbye. If the Earth had eyes, perhaps it too would look one last time at its own fading reflections. And perhaps we, as its observers, are tasked with carrying those images forward not only in photographs, but in memory, in responsibility. Looking one last time is not always sorrowful. Sometimes it is a gift. There are moments when turning back for a final glance is the act that makes us whole, when the image we carry becomes a compass for the future. The last look at a childhood home can remind us of the roots that shaped us. The last look at someone we love, before distance or circumstance takes us apart, can fuel a lifetime of stories, letters, or returns. The last look in the mirror, before stepping into an unknown chapter, can steady the hands, anchor the breath, remind us that we are, and always have been, enough. There's a subtle physics to it, too. The last look is not a fixed point. It's a bridge between what was and what will be. In quantum mechanics, an observation changes the thing observed. In human life, the observation of an ending changes the way we carry the past forward. Once you have looked for the last time, you no longer inhabit the same relationship with that object, place, or self. It is transformed in your memory, and you have transformed in its reflection. And so, the act becomes both science and art. Science, because it involves perception, memory, encoding, the physics of light. Art, because it cannot be reduced to data, is shaped by meaning, by the private alchemy of emotion. To look one last time is to become both a scientist and a poet of your own life, gathering the evidence of a moment while also painting it with the colors of your heart. In the end, perhaps we never truly know when a look is the last. We might pass a stranger on the street and never cross paths again without ever realizing that moment was final. We might walk away from a place thinking we'll return, only to find the door closed forever. And maybe that is why it matters to look fully, every time, to see with the same depth we give to farewells. To meet each reflection, each view, as if it might not return, because someday it won't. And when that day comes, we will be grateful for the way we lingered, for the way we let our eyes drink in the scene, for the way we carried it like a hidden star inside us. The last look is not just about endings. It is about the quiet miracle of having been here at all. So look now, not hurriedly, not distractedly. Look with the gravity of someone standing on the threshold of forever. Let the mirror hold you one last time. Let the light imprint its signature upon your mind. Let the image become part of you, not as it is, but as it felt. Then when you turn away, carry it gently. For in the great ledger of time, there is no greater wealth than a final glance that you loved enough to remember.